another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that's fine. It's fine.
We're fine.
I'm Dallas, that's Drew, that's Matt, and we are here on today, this great day of NFL free agency, to talk NFL free agency. That's what we're going to spend most of this episode on. We're going to recap all the big moves that interested us. We're going to talk about our teams because that does cover a lot of the big moves, that were made over the weekend and even through the early part of the week. And then we'll just talk about other moves that interested us. See what comes up and what interesting conversations those spark. And then just to round out the show, we'll do a little bit of MLB bites. There's things going on. People are going down in the MLB, and we'll talk about who that is and who may step up to fill their place, who those injuries open things up for. We'll get to all that later on in the show. But yes, let's start with NFL free agency. So the legal tampering period is over. You can do this now. You can talk to players, and over the weekend, a lot of as is usual, a lot of deals came in as reported. A lot of trades came in as reported, things that will end up going through. We're recording this on Monday this week, things that will go officially through on Wednesday, but things that definitely will happen we'll talk about. So like I said, we want to start with our teams. So let's start with the Rams of Los Angeles.
Sure.
So busy early. And also busy this weekend. Matt, take us through the Rams free agency so far.
Yeah, so I mean, what started off looking like it could have been this like nightmare of an offseason for the Rams has actually quickly turned into like are we the favorites for the NFC West? Like pretty outright. Um, I think you could make the argument. The fact that we were able to retain Stafford, not only getting him under what he originally was asking for, but then to bring back our left tackle, who has been kind of a very like under the radar bright spot for the Rams. Today we signed Puna Ford. He's considered like by the numbers like a top 5, top 10 run defender at the nose tackle. And the only reason we didn't win the Super Bowl last year is we couldn't stop the run. Um, and then obviously the big signing, I mean, we got Devontae Adams. And say what you want about the whole situation with Cooper Cup and, their similar age, whatever. I love Cooper Cup and I want to be a homer. I want to be biased, but you got to look at the longevity of the career. Devontae's been clearly the better receiver his entire career. I mean, Cooper Cup had one incredible, amazing season. He's an incredible guy, locker room guy. Like, yeah, I couldn't be more grateful he was a Ram. And I mean, Drew can attest to this back in the day. I was one of the few people who was like, I am a Cooper Cup guy from even before we drafted him. And I remember talking about it in college. I was so pumped when we got him, and obviously it's worked out. But I think this Devonte Adams move is really going to be quite the game changer for us. I think we're going to look more explosive. We're going to look more like what you imagine a Sean McVay led offense looks like, having a true X receiver who can beat man coverage. Um, Puka's great at what he does, and he'll continue to be great at what he does, but getting to add that, kind of X factor receiver into the lineup is going to pay dividends. Even if he's not the same guy he was, 5, 10 years ago, he's still going to be a dominant receiver for us. So, really excited about what we've got going on. We've lost a few kind of fan favorites here and there with like Bobby Brown and Michael Hoyt and stuff like that, but it's a business, man. Sometimes you got to let guys go for the betterment of the team. And I mean, every fan base can understand that sentiment. So yeah, I'm pumped, man. This has been truly, like I said, what went from what could have been a horrible nightmare of an offseason, losing just about everyone, to all of a sudden, I feel like we're pretty much, I mean, not to jinx it, but I feel like we're pretty much, injuries aside, penciled in to be at least NFC championship contenders. Like, we're going to be right there at the top of the NFC, and you love to see it.
Yeah, I think Devontae Adams is an interesting case here. I think it was smart of him to separate himself from Rodgers now.
Yeah.
I think that's a very smart thing to do. I'm sure he learned that lesson last year. about how how much how lucrative a move that could be. I mean, I think last season Devontae Adams had like a 200-yard game for the end of the year, right? Like just
Yeah,
last year.
his
So
final stretch down the like end of the season was actually still very reminiscent of like prime Devonte Adams. And I mean, it showed like he's obviously, he's lost a step from what he once was, but last year his production was not necessarily his fault. I would argue it was Aaron Rodgers and kind of just the Jets system as a whole hurt him more than he hurt himself. Like I remember watching the Jets play the Rams, and he was absolutely cooking us, just cooking us. And Aaron Rodgers would overthrow him or throw him out of bounds, never lead him downfield. He would always lead him somewhere honestly unproductive. So, man, give Matthew Stafford the weapons and, you know, I want to send Stafford out on top, man. Give him his MVP season, Super Bowl MVP, and let him retire so we can move on and not have these dramatic off seasons anymore.
I think there's also something to be said for just like the Rams being a place of stability for Devontae Adams because he went from like his best years were on the Packers when Aaron Rodgers was winning MVPs and like they were good, but then obviously Aaron Rodgers has some toxicity to him, and you know Rodgers leaves, and then Devontae Adams gets traded, and he goes to the Raiders, and it was like, oh, he's reunited with his college quarterback Derek Carr, but the Raiders for the last like 20 years have been one of the biggest messes in the NFL. So it's just not shocking that that didn't quite work out there. And then the Jets, if the Raiders are a mess, I mean, what are the Jets? Like a full-on garbage fire, Like so,
Yeah,
yeah,
I I I think the Rams, who have shown like Sean McVay is one of the best head coaches in football. They've been consistently a competitive team, and then they'll have a down year, but then it's like they're right back to it. Like it's not a team that is chaotic like these other teams he's been on. So and then of course everything you said, like Matt Stafford,
yeah,
it's is a guy who can sling it, and Sean McVay knows how to run an offense. So I like the fit.
yeah, 100%. And like you said, I mean, the Rams are nothing if not calculated. And he hasn't had that since the Packers. And just like you're saying, he's going to finish. And his agent came out and said, like, he is happy because he gets to basically end his career where he wanted to. He's going to retire with his final years being on the Rams. And I only see that doing good for him because he's going to go out with what I consider to be a borderline Hall of Fame quarterback and just an awesome offense. And so, what a way for him to go out, never have to deal with too much, considering Puka's always going to be on the field with him. Like, it's going to be a good situation for him.
yeah. He can definitely be that guy to sort of take the top off of things, when that's required.
Mhm.
Open up the lower and middle levels, for guys like Puka Nacua. I think, who you like to get Puka Nacua the ball quickly and in space.
Hmm.
So he can make his moves and do his thing. And so, having Devontae Adams along to clear out, at least one or two defenders might, be very helpful in order to boost that offense a little bit.
Yeah, and something I saw too, and like, we can move on after this, but something I saw that I was really excited about was someone went back and tracked all of his routes from the Jets when he was on the Jets. He was the motion man on a play. I think they said only like 14 times during his time on the Jets where he was in motion at the start of the play, and he was the target zero of those times. He was in motion and did not get the ball. On the flip side, Puka Nacua was in motion like 80 something times and was the target of said motion, uh, 53 or something like that. Like the Rams get their guys open creatively. It's not always just line up and beat the guy ahead of you, which I think people have kind of always like put Devontae in that box because of how much of a great route runner he is. And he has such a great release off the line of scrimmage. But dude, you get him in motion and you get him going against a guy where he's got a lead already on a corner, like his route running is only going to look that much more dominant. So I'm really excited to see the way Sean McVay kind of has envisioned, and all the reports were saying Sean McVay was like the lead recruiter on this. He was the one on the phone calls with them and making it happen. So I gotta trust the vision, man. I trust Sean McVay probably more than I should. So
Yeah, well, the Rams no doubt have had a good start to the offseason compared to like you said what it might have looked like maybe 2 weeks ago. And honorable mention to one of my old friends, Poona Ford. Love him. Love that he's getting a shot to continue to play. I think he played well in for the Chargers last year, so I'm glad that he was able to get another shot to play. And he doesn't even have to move. That's awesome. All right, so the next team of ours that we'll be talking about is the Broncos of Denver. Busy today. I
Hmm.
didn't necessarily look like they were going to be too busy going into the weekend, but busy today. Two really good signings today. So, Drew, let's go through the Broncos and what we got going on.
Yeah, before I start, I need to call timeout because I'm noticing the headwear, and it's going to take me 2 seconds to get mine on. So,
Well, Vamp.
we got to complete the trio.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to what Drew thinks about some of these Broncos signings
I
because
can't lie.
they
I was
did
gonna say
they did us a couple favors. I'll say that.
they did you a couple favors, but at the same time, I think genuinely the Broncos had one of my favorite free agency starts. Like, I looked at this list and I see the moves they've made, and I was doing mock drafts earlier in the week, sending them to you guys, and they literally addressed the positions I thought they were going to draft. Like, they saw the weaknesses and they said, "Here, let's solve them."
Yeah. Um, so thanks for the little lead in there. They were busy today. They signed, I'm going to try my best here. Talanoa Hufanga,
Oh, come on, man.
who,
That'll
name
work.
aside, he was an All-Pro a couple years ago. He's dealt with injuries the last couple of years, so it's kind of a like, you know, we're betting on the bounce back. He's still young. I think he's only like 26 still. So like,
He came in pretty
uh,
young.
that's good. And then Drake Greenlaw as well, a linebacker who both coming from the 49ers. Yeah, you're welcome. We also retained DJ Jones, who we once got from the 49ers. So I kind of like the idea of, you know, getting these guys from a team who has been in the Super Bowl a few times recently and taking their defensive guys. I like that. I think it kind of goes to show last year when they cut Russell Wilson, it was like they had to make a decision. They could have kind of split the dead cap hit more of a 50-50 because it was like the exact figure off the top of my head, I think it's like 85 million or something. It was a record dead cap hit.
Yeah.
But what they decided to do last year was take like the majority of it on last year's cap. So it was something like close to 60 on last year. So only 20 something is on this year's cap. And it goes to show, like, and you have a young cost controlled quarterback, you have some young cost controlled receivers, and then you can go out and you can spend on defensive guys and, maybe spend more than what the projections would have guessed these guys would get. But at the same time, you pay to get the guy,
Yeah.
because someone will.
Hmm.
So we did lose Javonte Williams to the Cowboys in free agency. I always liked him, but he never was able to quite put it together here. And it seemed this past year like he wasn't really part of the game plan to be like that workhorse running back. Um, so I do like addressing the defense. Also kept Jarrett Stidham, which is, backup quarterback's never going to be the most exciting move, but I feel like as far as backups go, he's solid,
Yeah.
So I do like what they've done. And um, I wasn't fully on board with Sean McVay, or sorry, Sean Payton, the Sean Payton hire. Um, Couple of Seans uh, when it happened because it kind of seemed like their other top choices went elsewhere, and they kind of settled for a guy that they ended up having to trade draft capital to hire, and it was like, but I I feel like he's the real adult in the room. We've got a young group, and then we're able to convince guys to come. They like what we have going on, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I can't lie. I totally agree with you. I remember being really like cautiously excited for you guys when you got Sean Payton because I was like, obviously he was really cool with the Saints and they had some awesome seasons with Drew Brees, but I was like, were they ever really like a great team, or was it just one of those flash in a pan, exciting offense, exciting, quarterback type of situations? And I wasn't sure how he was going to dig himself out of the whole Russell Wilson hole. And he's done it brilliantly and quickly. Like truly remarkable stuff. And I mean, once again, one of my favorite off seasons so far. I like it a lot.
Yeah, when you think about the Broncos, you think about like a team that you thought maybe had a lot of the defense figured out, but there were those two pretty big holes there at safety, namely absolutely they had one there. So it was going to be interesting to see what were they going to how were they going to address it? Were they going to go draft? Were they going to go free agent? They may do both. You never know.
Mhm.
And so, definitely adding in those couple of spaces, the safety and the linebacker, helps this defense. We've got the reigning defensive player of the year,
Yes,
Hmm.
on the
sir.
Broncos already, and they add a couple of good key pieces on top of him. So the Broncos defense, that's how you kind of make some noise while you've got a young quarterback who still might take another year to fully realize his NFL potential. Is you get that defense up and running.
Yeah,
And
and I mean, in that division, like,
yeah, yeah. Um, and I like addressing needs in free agency before the draft because then you get to the draft, um, and when there's not a clear and obvious hole, you can go best player available,
mhm.
or you can just take the guys that you like regardless of position, and so I like it. It's been a while since since the Broncos have gone into a draft without like needing something glaringly obvious, and so
No,
we'll see.
100%. Like you're saying, I think, the common idea of like free agency in the draft is like you use one to open yourself up for the other, right? If you draft really well, then you can go out and spend on big free agents. But if you sign people really well and you're really smart and calculated, it also opens you up in the reverse way of, like you're saying, you can just let the draft kind of fall to you. You don't have to rely on hitting a bunch of draft picks when you can just get the best player on the board. Sometimes, you don't need to think that hard about who's going to be good. It,
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely look forward to our draft episode, breaking that down whenever when that draft goes down. I'm sure, that'll be tons of fun. But for now, we're still on free agents, and we've come to the third of our teams that we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Uh, my Seattle Seahawks. I'd like to break this down into the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that's good. We'll start with the good. The Seahawks re-signed Jaron Reed and also
Mhm.
Ernest Jones to extension contracts. I think Jaron Reed is he's that link to the Legion of Boom era. He played with some of those guys right before they left the squad, and so he's that link that these guys that are younger like to have around to sort of bridge the gap between that great era and the people that are trying to be great now for this team. And so on the defense, Jaron Reed, great extension. And then Ernest Jones came to us last year, trade from the Titans after he was traded from the Rams to the Titans. And he just really he turned things around for our defense, no question. The Seahawks decided in the offseason last year to not even really speak to Jordan Brooks on his way out the door. They also decided that they would not be signing Bobby Wagner again, and they went with some different choices at linebacker. And neither one of those guys ended the season on the team. So that was a big mistake. The last offseason was sort of gambling on linebacker. It kind of hamstrung the defense a little bit in the first half of the year. The run defense was very bad, and that's because the linebackers were not very good. But Ernest Jones came in and he fixed that part of it. He is a guy that you can really count on to play solid, to play disciplined. And that's definitely what the Seahawks need up the middle. And I was very much hoping they would be able to, sign him to a deal so he wouldn't have to walk away and go to his third team in like a year, or fourth, I guess, fourth team in like a year. And so, yeah, very glad that we were able to sign those two guys. The defense looks good for this year. So with those two guys on board, I'm definitely looking forward to watching the defense play.
What about the
The
offense?
bad, yeah, the bad leads us to the offense, and then that's where the bad starts to come in. So the bad, they released Tyler Lockett. That's bad because it was coming, and it's probably in the best interest of the team. But that was kind of it's the biggest shame to me is that he came in the year after that Patriots Super Bowl was his first year, and we never won one with him. We never got back. We never even got back with him, and so that's just a bummer to me because he left the team now second all time in franchise like history for receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, receptions. So he really came into the league as he was our returner his first year. And he had some wide receiver two upside. And now he is one of the franchise's all time greats at the position. And, we'll miss him. But they also released Rayshon Jenkins and Draymond Jones. I listed those two because they were also starters last year. So two more guys who were starters last year got released as well. This was Tyler Lockett and Draymond Jones were money moves for sure. They wanted to be free of those contracts. And Rayshon Jenkins, he ended up injured, and Kobe Bryant stepped in and showed that he could do the job. And so Rayshon was not brought back. So that's the
Draymond
bad.
Jones famously in the Russell Wilson trade as well. So
Yeah, it was the same. It was the same offseason. Yeah, and so
it was in that. Was it not part of that trade? Oh no, that was Shelby
it was
Shelby
Shelby Harris
Harris.
was part of the trade, but
Yeah,
Draymond
my
Jones
bad.
was the free agent that they signed away
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
Broncos that year. And I remember seeing that and being like, and like seeing Broncos fans be like, oh man, I thought he might be solid next year, and I was looking forward to it. And then Seahawks, I don't know, for whatever reason, they just didn't unlock it. He was okay, but not great. And so the ugly began last Wednesday, I would say, as the first time that I heard, legitimately heard. I guess a couple weekends ago was the first time there were whispers of, the Packers saying something about DK. But I think last Wednesday was the first time I legitimately heard that there was going to be something going down with DK and getting traded because he had put out that he requested one. After extension talks seemed to not be close enough. So DK Metcalf was traded, and that happened over the weekend. He was traded to the Steelers. I hope that they don't sign Aaron Rodgers and that Russell Wilson gets to play with DK again. That'd be great. I would love to see that. He's going over there to be the Steelers, and Seahawks got a second round pick in return. Had to be that because the comp pick next year, if he walked, would have been a third round. So it had to be a second round at least. I didn't think anyone would do it, but the Steelers did. And so the Seahawks pulled the trigger. And then on Friday, out of nowhere, the Seahawks traded quarterback Geno Smith to the Raiders in exchange for a third round pick, the same compensation that they gave the Commanders for Sam Howell. The year before. So Geno and DK are gone. And so I spent the weekend just sort of being like, okay, like, I don't understand. Like, it was a real weekend of me finally giving up on John Schneider and me ever being on the same page again. Because clearly we will never be on the same page again, and he has a job in football and I don't. So, and that's why, because he doesn't agree with me, and that's why he works, and I'm not a GM. But yeah, Geno, and DK are gone, I'm thinking, okay, I was curious to see what the move would be. Like if they were going to kind of ride with Sam Howell and draft somebody late, or if they were going to sign a veteran. And that question was answered pretty quick today. Is like as quickly as they possibly could, they finalized the deal with quarterback Sam Darnold to bring him in. The deal is fine. Like, 110 million is a big number to look at, but
I
it's
think it's a
essentially,
great deal.
yeah, it's essentially a 2-year deal. You like 33 something million. And so, 55 million guaranteed only. So that's not, I mean, for a quarterback that can play as good as Sam Darnold can play, that's pretty good. And so the deal is fine. I don't think Gino's deal will be that much more. I don't know. Do not think it will end up being that much more money than that. But that is the state of the Seattle Seahawks. They will, unless someone pulls a Russell Wilson in this year's draft, they will be quarterbacked by Sam Darnold next year. And I pray for him and his body, as our offensive line is going to be terrible. And I hope that he can find a way to, maybe start getting those legs strong, buddy. Like, you'll have to be running. And so, hopefully he'll find a way, to overcome that. But, as far as that goes, that's the state of the Seahawks. And, as far as the division goes, the Niners, they're getting rid of people. We got rid of people. The Cardinals are always a joke until they're not. And then, and the Rams, are the only ones who seem to know how to soft rebuild correctly. But yeah, so that's what John Schneider wants to do. It's been 16 years of John Schneider, and I assume there will be more. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
You love the hopeful optimism of Seattle sports fans. You really have to admire it.
The most optimistic I can be is that I assume there will be more years of John Schneider coming.
Yeah, the Seahawks are going to keep existing, and that's great news for Seattle
And
fans.
that's exactly what I need.
I was thinking when it was announced that Sam Darnold was going to be with the Seahawks, I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't know if he looks right in that uniform. But then I pictured him in the throwbacks, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that might be one of the best a quarterback can look. They had to get DK out the door so that Sam could get his number 14.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'll let Matt go after me because I just have some very brief thoughts on this. But like, yeah, trading DK. I mean, when someone requests a trade, it is what it is. It's funny to me that the rumors were like he wanted to go somewhere warm and or somewhere with a really good quarterback situation, and he ends up in Pittsburgh where they don't currently have a quarterback, right?
Or
Basically,
warm.
so well, yeah, it's Pittsburgh, so it's frigid. Um, but yeah, it is what it is. We've seen this a million times. The star receiver isn't getting what he wants. Ask for a trade. Trade happens. We'll see how it works out. The Geno Smith trade, that I agree came out of nowhere to me. It makes me a little worried about the Raiders because the one thing they didn't have was competence at the quarterback position, and Geno is certainly competent. Um, but at the same time, it's like I kind of know what to expect from Geno Smith, uh, for better or for worse, versus if they use their high draft pick on a lottery ticket quarterback, who knows? Um, but I think from a Broncos fan perspective, I will never doubt the Seahawks trading their quarterback because they seem to know they seem to know when to pull the trigger on that. But yeah, and then we love Sam on this program, friend of the show. And I was saying before we started, my grandparents used to live outside of Seattle. I would love to own that house. If somehow Matt, you could get me hooked up with Sam, he's got some some money
I'll,
burning a hole in his pocket now. I
yeah, I'll drop
just,
you guys in a group chat.
yeah. I mean, he could live there for now, and then when his playing days
Yeah,
are
yeah,
over,
actually, he can
whatever.
have the house for the next 3 years.
Yeah. So
Maybe
anyway,
two
but
2 years.
I do. I mean, like, is Sam Darnold an upgrade over Geno Smith? Probably not. But they're both
I
they're
think it
both guys
remains
that
to
the
be
Jets
seen.
ruined. Right. They're both
Right.
guys that the Jets ruined at one point. Um, and Sam had a great year last year. I liked him on the Vikings. We'll see what they do quarterback wise. But um, overall, just yeah, got to be a weird weekend for Seahawks fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you bring up the question of like, is it an upgrade over Geno Smith? And to be honest, like the one thing I didn't realize was how old Geno was. Because I was around when Geno Smith was a part of the highlight tapes for Tavon Austin, when I was watching Tavon Austin highlight tapes as the Rams drafted him, and I had hope for the first time in a decade. And I forget how long ago that actually was because like I saw somewhere today, like they got 7 years younger at the quarterback position. And when you're talking about if you can actually get a franchise guy, and you're talking about you just cut off Geno at whatever age he is what, 34 or something, and get 7 years younger, you're talking about like, okay, does that open your window for 7 extra years? Like, does that extend the length of your window? Like, I didn't realize just how much of an age gap. I was thinking like maybe like 4, 3, like, because I know Sam's younger. I mean, he's a year younger than us, but I just didn't realize how old Geno Smith was. And like, props to Geno for still getting after it the way he does. But you're getting a cheaper quarterback, one who finished top five in MVP voting, uh, 7 years younger, absolutely an athlete. His touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson against the 49ers was the longest recorded yards in air touchdown of the year. I believe it even expands like further back than that, but it was like almost 70 yards in air. And it's like you're talking about a guy who has a cannon. He's fast. He's big. He's young, and he for the quarterback position. If you're paying 30 million a year, you're pretty happy on that, right? Like you got guys who are paying Trevor Lawrence 58 million a year, whatever it is. Like I think that's going to be really good for Seattle in the long term. And you know what that looks like this year remains a mystery for now. But in the long term, I mean, I think you're looking like you've got a guy you can build around. And I think, as friends, we've talked about this before, but I've always believed if Sam got the right opportunity, he could be a good quarterback in the NFL. I didn't know if he was going to be this Hall of Famer, if he was going to be, this all-time great, but it's like he's the type of quarterback you can still play good competitive football with. And the Seahawks can do that. I mean, they kept together for the most part a really good defense. Um, We'll see what happens with that offensive line. Jackson Smith the Jigba looks like he's the real deal. I mean, he looked insane last year. And, we'll see if they can put some weapons around him. And maybe Sam unlocks Noah Fant. I mean, we've been talking about Noah Fant as this, like, great prospect, and he's now 42 years old or something. Like, he's been a great prospect for most of my life. And so it's just like, at some point, he's got to either show it or not. But I don't know. I think Sam's got a lot of potential in Seattle, and I feel like it's going to be a good place for him. I'm sad that, I have to watch him lose to me every, twice a year, but at the same time, like it's just nice to see teams actually giving him a chance once again.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll say about Sam, like, we've seen his floor. It's low,
Yeah.
but he had an amazing year last year, and I could see the concern being, well, could it be a 1 year wonder type thing, or could it have been like
hmm
the perfect situation for him?
Hmm.
But a couple years ago, after the Seahawks traded Russell Wilson, Geno Smith stepped in to be the starting quarterback, and I don't think really anyone was like gung ho about that. And he stepped up and he did it. And I think, my thought at the time was maybe it's a 1 year wonder. Clearly not the case. Like he's been a perfectly solid quarterback.
Yeah.
Um, I think I have no idea how good Sam will be. It could be like a terrible disaster for Seattle, or it could be the best move of the offseason. I don't really know if it's going to be in between.
Yeah.
But um, yeah,
Dallas,
I give them the benefit of the doubt.
remind me, who's the offensive coordinator? Because I know they fired Grubbs.
Clint Kubiak came over from New Orleans.
Oh, Clint, that's
Um,
that's the Shanahan tree.
so that's going to be what happens. I am aware of the fact that, the Seahawks, they want to be run first, obviously. They traded DK Metcalf. And so they are going to lean into that part of the Kubiak scheme a lot, and they'll probably want to lean on play action a lot. I don't
Those
know.
are both strengths of Sam.
I in Minnesota, that was a strength of Sam's. In Seattle, when you turn your back to the defense and the guys up front stink, we'll see if that can be a strength of the offense. It won't be Sam's fault if this doesn't work out, is what I'm saying. If this does end up being, kind of a disaster, I think it's going to have to be because right now he's got Jack Smith and Jigba, who is good, and Jake Bobo lined out wide, and he's got offensive linemen that stink. And that is all subject to change. There's good offensive linemen that are still available to sign. There's good offensive linemen, I'm sure, in the draft. There always are. But I have never seen John Schneider sign a good offensive lineman, nor have I ever seen him draft one. And so I don't know why he would start now. And so I do fear a little bit
But
because
Schneider,
I would hope that Sam will be able to excel. I hope so. Obviously, I'm a fan of the team, but I have fears.
I do think it's funny too, because every single NFC West team has also basically added to their defensive line. So that's just funny.
Yeah,
Um, that point aside, because I mean, 49ers, it's looking like Joey Bosa is going to end up there. So you're going to have the Bosa brothers at defensive ends. Cardinals signed Josh Sweat. We get Poona Ford. Crazy stuff. Anybody. Was John Schneider not the guy who got Dwayne Brown? Because Dwayne Brown, I will say, is like the Seattle Seahawks offensive lineman I know.
I mean, he's always. It's funny. He played for Seattle, but he's always a Texans offensive lineman to me because he was good in Seattle for like a year and a half, a couple years maybe.
Was that
Um,
it?
And yeah, that was really kind of it. He came at the tail end of his kind of time being great. I think his best years were with Houston for sure. We got like about a year and a half, 2 years of a good Dwayne Brown.
That's crazy. It felt
Um,
like so much
but
longer.
yeah, I mean he was with the team for a while. That's for sure. He signed an extension, I think, at some point. It was a trade and then an extension. And so he was with the team for a little bit. But as far as contributing a good member, just a little stint there. But yeah, so that's what I'll say about the Seahawks. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the rest of free agency in the draft to address their need, which was offensive line, which was actually their only real problem going into the season. But John Schneider decided to create a few, and so we'll have a receiver in the draft. Hopefully, I've heard there are a lot of receivers in the draft, numbers wise. I've heard mixed things about whether people like them or not. But so hopefully someone will be there for us with our million picks, and one of them will hit. So what about some other stuff? So let's get to some other teams. There were other teams that made moves. I just mentioned the Texans. They made a move at offensive line, not necessarily an acquisition, but let's talk about Texans trading Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders. Commanders, they're hitting it. They're doing it.
Commanders are
They're
going
trying to,
all in. I mean, they're
yeah.
going all in on building around Jaden Daniels, which I think is what you have to do with young quarterbacks. It's the thing I've appreciated most about this past draft of quarterbacks is the teams are actually supporting them. Like so often we see teams that draft quarterbacks at the top take this really like long, far-sighted approach with it of like, well, we drafted this guy, so that means he's got to be our guy for 20 years, which means we're not going to be aggressive. We're going to hoard picks and money, and we're going to get the right guys. And sometimes it's like, sometimes you just need to improve your roster and actually see if that quarterback is a dude. Like it's the same thing Sean McVay did with Jared Goff. The second he got there, We went out, we signed John Sullivan, who was, a Pro Bowl center at the time, Andrew Whitworth, a Hall of Fame left tackle, brought in Robert Woods, and I think that was even the year we may have gotten Sammy Watkins. Like, we improved the team around him, and all of a sudden you saw Jared Goff, who was already being called a bust under Jeff Fisher in 1 year, go to being this awesome quarterback. And obviously he had his ceiling, and he is who he is now. He's a really great quarterback. But, you know, the Commanders, they're going after Laramie Tunsil. They go out and get Debo Samuel, and they are getting these weapons. They re-signed Zach Ertz, who, I mean, in the playoffs had, I think, maybe 500 catches against the Eagle. Like,
Yeah, I
they're
think that's the right
re-signing.
number. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's close. I mean, it's got to be about that. And so you get all these guys around him, and you can actually see, do we have something Jane Daniels? His rookie season, obviously amazing, but can he now take it to another level? He has a bookend left tackle. He's got weapons. He's got Terry McLaurin. De'Ami Brown looked good at the end. Debo Samuel's obviously a weapon in the right situation. And, also shout out to the Bears. The Bears have absolutely put an offensive line in front of Caleb Williams. They went out and
Hmm.
signed Drew Dahlman, who was a top five center by pretty much every metric last year. They go out and trade for Jonah Jackson from the Rams, who, when he was on the Lions with Ben Johnson, was an all pro guard. And then they go out and they also trade for Joe Thuney, who, I mean, he's been in Super Bowl like 6 out of his 9 seasons he's played. Like, the dude is just a leader and a winner and a great guard. They put weapons around him. They went out and they drafted Roma Dunze. Like, when you put these weapons around young quarterbacks, you actually get to see who they are. And that's why I'm like really excited to see, Bo Nix had a great rookie season. He had some solid weapons. Can they add to what they already have there? Because I would love to see him get that same kind of opportunity. Um, and that goes for all the quarterbacks, honestly. It's just, yeah, I mean, that was a long-winded answer of Laramie Tunsil trade. I think it's a ridiculous trade for Houston to make. I think it clearly shows that Houston doesn't necessarily believe where they're going. I don't think they have much of a vision on offense because the one problem they had last year is they could not protect CJ Stroud. Like, if there was a single weakness, it was that their receivers couldn't stay on the field and they couldn't protect CJ Stroud. And to get rid of your best lineman by a mile. And granted, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but on the surface, this is a move that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And,
Well, you have
they
to
get a second and a
remember.
third and a fifth, I think. Not like they don't even get that high because it's going to be the Commanders' second round pick is going to be basically an early third. So it's like, really, what's the value coming in here?
Yeah, you have to remember Laramie Tunsil. He can't actually be that good because there was a video of him like smoking weed before he was drafted. So
Was that him?
yeah,
Dude,
Oh man, I
his
remember
draft
that. I
stock
didn't remember who.
his draft stock plummeted like 14 picks or something
Yeah,
because of that, and
yeah,
he
he
was
was going to be
good.
like a top two pick.
Look at
I
that,
couldn't
he
remember
was
who that
still
was,
good.
but I'll always remember
Um,
that.
anyway, I like the move a lot for Washington. It's interesting to me because I think the 2024 Commanders were a lot like the 2023 Texans.
Hmm.
You get the second pick at quarterback, turns out to be rookie of the year, has an amazing year, leads the team to the playoffs, wins a playoff game. Like, um, Jaden Daniels won a couple, but like, yeah, they're not too dissimilar in my mind. But I love the move for Washington. Don't really get it for Houston. Um, what I love especially is that, I mean, Laramie Tunsil's a good he's a good left tackle any way you slice it, but especially in pass blocking, he was the fourth
Hmm.
rated
Hmm.
pass blocking tackle according to Pro Football Focus.
Hmm.
So I love that for Jaden Daniels. I also, to your point, Matt, like, yeah, we talked about the Broncos upgrading around Bo Nix. Um, and then you mentioned Commanders and the Bears, which I love that for those guys too. Also, the Patriots are doing it for Drake May, um, who he started the second half of the year last year and looked like he kind of had the goods more so than I would say Mac Jones did a few years ago.
Hmm.
Um, they got Milton Williams the uh, from the Eagles after winning a
Hmm.
Super Bowl last year.
Got
Upgraded
Harold
the
Landry.
defensive line. Uh, yeah, Harold Landry. They got Robert Spillane from he was
The
with
Raiders.
the Raiders last year, I believe. Yeah, and Carlson Davis. So like those are all defensive moves, but like you got to have both.
Hmm.
And they got an offensive lineman too, Morgan Moses, who he's a
Yeah,
veteran, been around for a long time.
solid
So
tackle though.
I like um, the Patriots. I like them getting past the Belichick era, and I know he wasn't there last year, but they had that succession plan in place, so it kind of felt like a continuation of the Belichick era. Obviously, he was very successful, but I think his time had come. That was pretty clear, and so new direction, new quarterback who looks like he might be it, and then you add guys around him. I think it's the formula, and I like that we're seeing all four of these teams who drafted quarterbacks in the first round last year uh, really invest. That leaves out, I guess, Michael Penix and the Falcons and JJ McCarthy and the Vikings, but they were the two who played the least. I mean,
Hmm.
JJ McCarthy didn't play at all, so you, these teams know more what they have in their quarterback, and I like building around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to the credit of the Vikings and the Falcons, because I don't want to just sit here and dump on them of like they haven't done anything. They also have bona fide superstars for their guys. Like you're
Uh-huh.
giving J.J. McCarthy literally Justin Jefferson. You're giving Michael Penix literally, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London. Like they have actual weapons. But it's so interesting talking. I mean, I don't even know if I want to talk about this, but I'm like the Bill Belichick thing is always so interesting to me because everyone loves to give him so much credit and so much. I mean, yeah, credit. They love to give him so much credit, but maybe hot take. I don't actually think Bill Belichick was a good head coach, dude. I mean, say what you
That is
want.
a hot take.
I think he was a great coordinator. I think what he did for his defenses was always pretty ahead of the curve, and he was able to shut down a lot of great things. But like you see his success before and after Tom Brady, and it's pretty much minimal. He's never really led a winning organization before or after Tom Brady. And I don't know, just I'm a real Bill Belichick hater, more so than I think any other football entity. So there's my hate.
There we go. We'll see what Bill Belichick has to offer the television viewing audience this offseason. Hard Knocks is going to be at UNC this year because thanks to
Is
the
that confirmed?
Giants, yes, thanks to the Giants' loudmouth GM, no NFL team wants to do it anymore because they do not want to get caught on camera like the
Dude,
Giants GM did.
okay, I'm so sorry. Can I say one thing about that? Because I'm looking at Twitter right now on my feed. So Saquon signed a 3-year, $38 million deal with the Eagles.
Hmm.
Today, he signed Darius Slayton to a 3-year, $36 million deal. He gave Saquon's contract to Darius Slayton. No shade to Slayton, but dude literally was on camera saying, "You just can't pay a running back that much. You can't do it."
Yeah, so we'll see what Belichick has to offer us this offseason. He'll maybe dial up some interesting moments. I'm sure the guy known for being very televisually interesting and genial will be fun on Hard Knocks, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. So that'll conclude our NFL free agency sort of section of the episode here. We'll talk more as the offseason goes on, as moves continue to trickle in, as the draft happens. We'll talk more about our teams changing and the league changing, teams around the league evolving and morphing. But for now, let's move on to MLB. There's a little bit going on, as I alluded to at the top of the show. There's some players that have already gone down. And so we're going to talk about those guys and then hit a couple quick dingers and stingers after this. But let's talk about Garrett Cole. So this morning, we all sort of, maybe last night, this morning, we all sort of went to bed / woke up to the news that he was considering Tommy John surgery. He was recommended it by one doctor, was waiting on a second opinion, and this afternoon it was confirmed that he will have Thomas Jonathan surgery, and he will be out for the remainder of the season. So, I mean, let's lump these guys in together. And Giancarlo Stanton is also mulling a season-ending injury, season-ending surgery related to a shoulder injury. And so, where do the Yankees find themselves missing now Garrett Cole and potentially also missing Giancarlo?
Yeah, they and just for all the viewers who are clamoring for the AL Central preview,
Right.
that'll come later. We're going to do a 2 episode week, but yeah. So the Yankees, Garrett Cole being hurt is obviously the biggie. Tommy John, it's the worst thing that can happen to a pitcher. I mean, it's not necessarily career ending, but it's that's a year. You are missing a year. Garrett Cole is not getting any younger. He had some arm troubles last year and played towards the end of the year or like middle of the year and then played through the playoffs and everything. But yeah, that's a huge blow for the Yankees, who already, Luis Heel, last year's Rookie of the Year, is out for a couple months at least with an oblique issue, I believe it is. Like, the talk that I see on Twitter and everything, it doesn't sound like Yankees fans are particularly hopeful about that injury being nothing. So they went from Marcus Stroman probably being traded to Marcus Stroman being their number 4 starter. So, and then Stanton, of course, as well. He's not really been super healthy the last few years. Went sicko mode in the playoffs. But I guess, yeah, it's like both elbows are all messed up from some change he made last year. I think that one is the least impactful. I don't know, because he's good, but he's no longer Giancarlo of the past. But the lineup got worse, and there's no doubt the lineup got worse when they lost Juan Soto. Now your starting DH is also going to be out. And so it was like the calling card was they improved their pitching so much. Well, now 2 of your starters are missing significant time. Your best starter is missing an entire year. So I don't, off the top of my head, I think I predicted the Yankees to win the division because it's a little bit of insurance for myself. But right now, I would be changing that pick. Like that is such a big blow to a team that already wasn't looking as good as last year. And remember, 2023, they missed the playoffs. They were basically a 500 team. So if you don't have Garrett Cole and you don't have Giancarlo Stanton and you don't have Luis Heel, I don't love it for them. I don't love it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I mean, if we even just go back and look at our division preview where we talked about the Yankees, like one of the things we talked about was like, okay, well, they've got a pretty strong pitching staff now, and that's going to be definitely a strength of theirs. But like both of us said the exact same X factor. You dialed it in a little bit more, but it was like they need to have someone on this team who can hit the ball that's not named Aaron Judge. They just lost one of those guys, potentially, for the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like, when you're talking about a team that was already feeling very thin, they didn't have a ton of margin for injury. The fact that they've already been hit this hard and the season hasn't started feels really tough to recover from. And I don't know realistically what their aspirations were, but it's like if you were thinking World Series before, at this point, I think you're hoping you can take the division. Like, I think Yankees would say just division would be a success.
I've seen Yankees fans on Twitter saying, well, the American League's still bad, so maybe we can sneak into the playoffs. Like this is a big blow.
Mm-hmm.
They were top heavy. They did not have the depth really anywhere.
Yeah,
But like Giancarlo being out, I mean, their bench was going to be a weak bench. There's no doubt about it. Now you're just shoving someone into the DH role. I don't know who that's going to be.
I mean, do you think they bring up like one of their prospects? Because I know they've kind of had guys like Spencer Jones waiting.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Spencer Jones sees time this year, but I don't think he's going to be like their opening day DH because I don't think he's ready for that. He struck out in Double A at a really high clip. Um, I don't think they're prepared for this amount of injury. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if they made a move at pitching in the pitching department because there are still a couple veterans out there who aren't signed. Kyle Gibson is out there. Lance Lynn is out there. Not that they could possibly replace Garrett Cole's production, but a warm body to give you innings. Um, Maybe they swing a trade. I mean, I've heard like at the right price, Sandy Alcantara could be up for grabs coming back from his Tommy John.
that's a future Padre.
Uh, I would hate to see that personally because I like Sandy a lot. But yeah, I mean, you add this to, and I'm not going to go into like a deep dive on this, but Grayson Rodriguez is also going to start the season on the IL.
Hmm.
Andrew Kittredge is going to miss a lot of time. So you got the two top teams from the AL East last year, both with pretty significant injuries. Um, Meanwhile, the Red Sox biggest problem is where are all these good players going to play on the field? So um, I love the depth that the Red Sox have built. I said that in our AL East episode.
Hmm.
And um, so even though there are a couple pitching injuries with the Red Sox, it's not like no one's freaking out about it. And I think as a Red Sox fan, but I think as a baseball fan, like you got to say like that division is winnable, and you just got to go out there and take it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so curious. I'm looking through kind of their projected 26 right now, and it's like even looking like who they would have coming off the bench, like this right now has it projected that their DH is going to be Ben Rice.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had some flashes. He was supposed to be like their backup catcher, kind of like he's like a first baseman who can also catch. So yeah, if it's Ben Rice, I mean DJ LeMahieu's hurt. That people made a kind of a deal about that. I know Yankees fans want to cut him. Like he was so bad last year.
Yeah, I
So
was gonna
like
say, I don't even think they're just using that as an excuse to be like, oh, we are hurt, and they are, but
yeah,
like they didn't want him in the lineup last year.
right. So you got LeMahieu. You got like there's a couple Oswaldos on the team. Cabrera. One of them's going to start at third. Cabrera and Peraza. But like you have Trent
Hey,
Grisham. Like
bring in Grisham, baby, bring in Grisham.
I mean, I could see a scenario where like Judge is the DH to save him a little bit, and like Grisham plays center because he's a good defensive center
Mhm.
fielder. Bellinger goes to right. I mean, I don't know. They're in a world of hurt, literally, and
Yeah,
if anyone else goes down, it's like, okay, how do you even salvage the season at that point?
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's keep it with pitching because another piece of news that came out in the last week was that George Kirby over in Seattle is expected to be shut down from shoulder inflammation, and he will be expected to start the season on the injured list. Never what you want to hear with a pitcher. Shoulder inflammation, it's a thing that can recur throughout the season and eventually lead to, of course, surgery. And so the Mariners are exercising some caution here at the end of spring training, and probably at the beginning of the season. But so George Kirby, Mariners cursed, starting early. But what do we think the odds are that he is only on the IL for a short time and makes a comeback, and that Mariners rotation looks as strong as we hope?
I think the odds that the Mariners pitching rotation is as good as last year and as healthy as last year are very slim. And I've thought that all along, even before Kirby got hurt, because they just have had like everyone stayed healthy. I think they only had six guys make starts for them last year, which is like in today's
That's
baseball.
crazy.
That's pretty wild. Um, Kirby, obviously one of the better ones. I heard, like it was more like he kind of wanted to play through it, but they're like, we're not going to take any chances, and so I do expect him to come back pretty early in the season. Now, do I think he'll come back and there'll be no risk of something flaring up again? No, this will be on my mind until he makes a good amount of starts. Um, but this is just one of those things where it's so incredibly frustrating how their off season went, and we haven't gotten to that division yet. But like they have this great pitching staff, and like I said, they had incredible fortune with that pitching staff to this point, and they just didn't upgrade the lineup around it. And it's like this can happen on any given year. A guy can go down, or multiple guys can go down. So like you got to capitalize when strike when the iron's hot. Um, so am I overly concerned about this specific injury? No, but it just kind of, it's on my radar, and it could end up being a much bigger deal.
Yeah, no, I mean, I 100% agree. And they're lucky that they are who they are, right? Like, this is a team that has a ton of depth. Like, they're taking a hit at their strength. Um, it's not like, losing Giancarlo Stanton for the Yankees is hitting their depth where it hurt. Like, they have four awesome pitchers who are going to step right in and be pretty good. Like,
Hmm.
and like you're saying, I didn't know that they were kind of just playing it safe, but if this isn't something that's like really threatening substantial time, like, even if he's on an innings limit, if he's on a pitch count, like he's still going to probably provide some really quality playing time through the season, and they have so much depth at the pitching position. Like, they play at a pitcher's park, just all the things. Like, I feel like they're going to be fine. That's my gut feeling when I see this news. Bummer. George Kirby's a cool guy, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
and in the immediate, like the short term, it'll be Emerson Hancock who will step in, uh,
Mhm.
and he was a
He
touted
was solid.
prospect in his own right, and he played pretty well last year. So I don't think, as a Mariners fan, if no one else gets hurt on that pitching staff, like it's really not that big of a deal. But are the Mariners going to be a great team? You'll have to wait till our episode on the American League West to hear my take on that.
Yes, yes, and that episode will come closer to the start of the season, so look forward to that. But yeah, to wrap today, we'll go with some dingers and stingers. We have a little bit of time, so let's go ahead and hit them. And yeah, and we'll wrap up. But yeah, so let's hit dingers first. Start with the good. Drew, give me your dinger for this episode.
Yeah, this is kind of older news now, but we've had a while since we've recorded. But it was announced that Albert Pujols will manage the team Dominican Republic for the World Baseball Classic, which is it's next year,
Mm,
2026. Yeah, so I mean, it feels like just yesterday that Shohei struck out Trout to end the
man.
2023 one. The World Baseball Classic is one of my favorite things. Sorry, Mets fans. I know it really messed with your closer, but um, it was just amazing. I've always liked it, but like the last time we did it, and Team USA actually fielded a team that had the stars that Team USA could have. I love it. The most stacked roster on paper is always the Dominican Republic, and Albert Pujols managing, and he's stated that he has MLB managerial aspirations. Um, I hope Dominican Republic runs the table. I don't think they've ever won the World Baseball Classic. I think it's been only Japan's won, or no, they might have won. They might have won one of them. I don't know, but Japan wins most of the time. Um, Anyways, I'd love to see that. I mean, that roster, it'll just be stacked.
They've
And
won two.
Pujols, have they? Okay. Well, I misremembered.
1948 and 2013.
Oh, 48. I don't even know. I didn't even know we did it then. Because '06 was
It
like the
was
first one of
it was
modern time.
called something else. It was the Baseball World Cup back then.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so 20. Wait, what was the recent one?
2013.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember that now. Come to think of it. That was David Wright that's when he got his Captain America nickname. But yeah, so Dominican, I'll be rooting for them. If he does a good enough job, even if he doesn't, I could really see him getting some looks in the future as an MLB manager.
Yeah.
Albert Pujols. I was born in 1996. I became a baseball fan at a young age. There's there's not many people that rival him in terms of how awesome he was. So getting him more involved in the game, I like to see it.
Yeah, I feel like, and even as like a more casual fan of baseball, it's like I've never heard anyone speak poorly of him. Like correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like he's just like universally beloved by the baseball community. Like
Yeah, maybe some Angels fans don't like him because of his
he was
I
performance,
was
old.
I
but
was I was gonna say I've seen plenty of negative talk about Albert Pujols, and I've never said any negative talk about him, but I've seen a lot of it. Yeah, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
you better scrub those old
but
tweet
the players past and present have loved him. His teammates have always liked him. So I think he'll do a great job.
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so. All right, Matt. Dinger for this week. Let's hear it.
Oh, dude, my dinger for this week is a long time coming. It's personal to me. Has nothing to do with anything, but it makes me happy. I am in a very competitive, it's like by invite, you have to get found essentially. But I'm in a fantasy football league with like a bunch of dudes who work in the NFL, basically. Guys who are ESPN analysts, NFL analysts, journalists, and I got invited to join a startup dynasty league with them 2 years ago. It's a big ass buy-in. It's super fun. It's just wild because they all know who to pick up before the news breaks. And it's quite an exciting thing. And this past season, I won. I went all in. I've traded a lot of picks. I've traded a lot of my good players, that are kind of younger to just get players that are awesome right now. And it worked. And after months of trying to connect with this person via Twitter DMs because I forgot his email, I have finally connected with our commissioner and gotten my winnings, and it feels so good. Feels so good. It hit right when I was landing in Hawaii, and I saw that cash prize come in, and I was like, "It's go time, baby!"
That'll
Get
work.
some mai tais.
That'll work.
Absolutely.
Nice, brilliant. We love to hear that this podcast stays winning. I
Always.
was going to mention earlier another great weapon that the Commanders have is Olamide Zaccheaus, who uh, absolutely put the nail in my coffin in our championship in our league that we share. So I will always remember him
We
and always
love
respect him as the number one, the true number one he is. So
we love an
yeah,
Olivia Zacchaeus shout out on the
yes.
pod.
Love to hear that Matt stays winning. That's awesome. And then, so yeah, let's end the podcast with some stingers though. Drew, let's hear what you got for us.
Yeah, so mine is didn't really it's not really a sports story. It just involved sports, but and it's not a story at all to anyone besides maybe me and Dallas, and now I'm going to include Matt. Um, we're all fans of The Lonely Island and Andy Samberg, and they have a podcast that they do with Seth Meyers, and they recap their days at SNL. And me and Dallas are avid listeners. And on a recent episode, they did an ad read, and for some reason they get talking about sports, about football. And Andy Samberg chimes in again, like one of my, probably my number one favorite comedian ever. And he's a 49ers fan, and he starts talking about Brock Purdy and how he hopes the 49ers give him a big contract extension. And that's fine for a person to think that. It disappoints me greatly that this guy that I love so much shows that he doesn't know ball because, well, it may be fine to think that. That's just such a homer take. I mean, if you think Brock Purdy's worth a big contract extension, I mean,
I think
you
he
just
easily
simply,
could push 70 million.
well, a Rams fan and a Seahawks fan might love that. Uh, it just kind of breaks. It's like, never meet your heroes. I didn't meet him, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit like, you're
But you
just
heard
like a
him talk.
homer. You're just a homer. You're just, and I don't know if he's ever claimed to be a huge football fan, so whatever. But it just bummed me out a little bit to hear that he can't see beyond his little circle, and he thinks Brock Purdy is deserving of a massive contract.
Yeah, everyone make sure to tag Andy down in the comments so he knows like we got one of his top haters here.
And while we're tagging him, where's today's episode? Huh? How
Yeah,
about that? What the
it never
heck?
came, did it?
I
Because
was
I didn't see it this
promised.
morning.
I went to
It's
bed
daylight
last
savings,
night.
man.
I went to bed last night knowing that I would wake up to Ross Trent episode. That episode is not here as of now, even, and I'm upset about it. But all right. So enough bashing on the schedules of one of the busiest people. Someone who's busier than any of us could ever comprehend. All right. We'll end with Matt's stinger. What do we got?
My stinger's a bit of a heartbreaker. We've kind of talked about it earlier, but one of my favorite players, I think, ever. Um, his time is coming to an end with the Rams. It really hurts knowing in the next few days. I think the new league year starts on like the 15th, and the Rams have pretty much already said publicly Cooper Cup, one way or another, will not be on this roster when the new year hits. So I've basically got like a week and a half left to mourn maybe one of my favorite Rams of all time.
Buddy, your
Um,
math's off. You got like 5 days tops.
no way. Dude, I'm still on island time.
I guess so.
Oh man, that's actually yeah, I didn't realize it's so close, guys. I may be in a little bit of denial. So I mean
Yeah.
that just makes it sting that much more. I only have 5 days tops. And I mean, there's nothing else to say. I love Cooper Cup. Um, he was a part of the most exciting sports memory I've ever had. Um, and the fact that, it feels like it was just yesterday, I watched him absolutely memeing Eli Apple in the end zone to win the Super Bowl, and now he's going to be gone. It just like, it doesn't feel real yet. And, we've said goodbye to some awesome players with the retirement of AD, with, Jared Goff getting traded, Todd Gurley getting cut. Like we've said goodbye to a lot of players, but there's something different about this Cooper Cup one, and I think it's gonna hurt for a while.
And I'll just chime in like, I mean, if, of any player in the NFL, of any player on the Rams that I like link to you, it's Cooper Cup. Because
Hmm.
you alluded to it earlier, you were so early on him. I remember you do it like the day after the draft. What was he, a third round pick?
He was a third round pick out of Eastern
Yes.
Washington.
Yeah, easy. Yeah, and you're like, I really think this wide receiver we got in the third round, Cooper Cup from Eastern Washington. And it's like, okay, this white guy from Eastern Washington. I was like, okay, Matt, sure. I'm sure this guy was the steal of the draft. Uh-huh. And hey, credit where credit's due. You were absolutely right. And so I like I'll never forget that. And so
No,
I feel bad for you. I mean, we all go through it, and obviously Dallas is going through it a little bit. And especially in the NFL, it seems like the time that we get our favorite players on our teams is a lot shorter. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry for
this
you.
just this just feels like my Mookie Betts moment. Like you watch a favorite go, and granted, you got to watch him be really good for the Dodgers for a long time, and Cooper Cup's probably going to be bad wherever he ends up, but still sad.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, every team and every generation has their guy, right? that's sort of been around for a long time. And so, yeah, like I would say more than right now, I went through that a few years ago, when
Yeah.
everything
Mhm.
was coming down. But
Yeah.
yeah, so all sports fans can relate to losing their guy.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it'll be a tough 5 days. You got to expedite those stages
It's gonna
because it's
feel
coming
like
for
a
you.
week and a half.
Yeah, it's coming for you. All right, so that'll do it for this week's episode. Actually, maybe not this week's only episode. Depending on when it drops, we'll definitely be recording again this week because we do have an MLB division preview to get to, as Drew mentioned. We will do the
Yes,
AL
sir.
Central on our next episode whenever you find that dropping, and we'll continue our MLB division previews there. But for now, that is all that we have for you now. So again, thanks for listening. If you're listening or watching, appreciate the love. Go ahead and share us around if you can. People you think would like this, go ahead and share it around to us. Let us know your thoughts on NFL free agency in the comments. Let's hear them. We love to stay engaged. So for now, have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time, hopefully pretty soon.
Bye.
Bye.